Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Test Those Breasts podcast. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn. I'm a retired teacher of 20 years and a breast cancer thriver turned staunch, unapologetic, loud supporter and advocate for others, bringing education and awareness through a myriad of medical experts, therapists, caregivers, and other survivors. A breast cancer diagnosis is incredibly overwhelming with the mounds of information out there, especially on Dr. Google. I get it. I'm not a doctor, and I know how important it is to uncover accurate information, which is my ongoing mission through my nonprofit. The podcast includes personal stories and opinions from breast cancer survivors and professional physicians, providing the most up-to-date information at the time of recording. Evidence, research, and practices are always changing, so please check the date of the recording and always refer to your medical professionals for the most up-to-date information. I hope you find this podcast a source of inspiration and support from my guests. Their contact information is in the show notes, so please feel free to reach out to them. We have an enormous breast cancer community ready to support you in so many ways. Now let's listen to the next episode of Test Those Breasts. Well, hello, Jake. Welcome to the show. It's so nice to see you. I'm so glad you're here. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great sunny day out here in Western Massachusetts.
Good. Well, I did tell you on our pre-interview that I love Massachusetts. So anytime I can get back there, to visit, I love that state. And I'm way over here in Nevada. And it is also a really nice day, although apparently we had another earthquake. So things are super exciting here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you feel it?
I didn't. And it's weird because normally I do feel the earthquakes, but the last few that we've had here, I haven't even felt them at all, but everyone else in our area did. But I'm fine with that because it really makes me very uneasy. So I just woke up this morning and my friend said, oh yeah, hey, there was an earthquake and I had no idea. So I'm, again, perfectly fine with that. Well, listen, I'm so glad you're here because you reached out to me, I don't know, it was a couple of months ago, and I had been following you for a while. And because I am one of those patient advocates who loves to include everyone in breast cancer. And when I got diagnosed, I had no idea that men could get breast cancer. And so I'm always trying to include men in my conversation, and we'll get into that. But I just want to have you share all the things about who Jake Messier was before breast cancer, because we know we change a lot. Who were you? Who is this guy?
That's a good question. I usually, when I do a lot of these podcasts, and usually they start off with, hey, tell me about a point of diagnosis, right? And so I guess, who was I before? I guess, if I have to put it into big buckets or categories, I was a Marine for 10 years when I was a younger man. And then when I got out of the Marine Corps, I came back to Massachusetts, and I then started working in sort of the Boston nonprofit ecosystem, right? And I navigated my way up through there, where I became the chief marketing officer and the VP of marketing and various titles for various large nonprofits in the Boston ecosystem. From that point, I started my own marketing agency. So there's an entrepreneur in there as well that I did this with. So I started my own marketing communications agency for particularly nonprofits. We only service nonprofits. And at that point we went global. We had clients all over the country and a couple, global clients. And so, if I put myself into those categories, I'm a dad, and a grandfather, and a Marine and a veteran and an entrepreneur. In 2018, with all of those things going on in my life, I had a stroke, in 2018, and that set a different lifestyle in motion for me. But it wasn't right away, right? I didn't have the stroke and then immediately change who I was. I had the stroke, and then in 2020, I decided to start changing who I was. So I dropped about 120 pounds, and I went through a real deep therapy session, a 2-year deep therapy session, where I was trying to figure out how I could make myself into a better human being. And that was obviously acknowledging a lot of things in my past that I had to acknowledge. Yeah. And when I did that, that's what sort of leads me right up to getting diagnosed in 2023, right? And I think that all of those things led me to the point where in 2023, when I am diagnosed, right? And I think most people, when they are diagnosed, that's when they have their "what does it all mean" moment, right? What, how do I, whatever. And I had already been in that mode for 2+ years. And so when I got to the point of diagnosis, I was already on this, emotional, spiritual, physical, and mental health, extreme challenge, right? To make myself better. And so that's sort of who Jake was, and then who I became. And then, like you said, if I became Jake 2.0 in 2021, 2022, Jake 2.0 doesn't really fit after you have a cancer diagnosis, right? So we're working on Jake 3.0 at this point, right? Because all of those things get put through a lens of cancer at this point. And then you become something in somebody else.
Okay. So you had already gone through these kind of transformations, going through it, much like most people at a younger age don't go through that. So what was your age when you were diagnosed? How did that all happen?
Sure.
When did you find out? How did you find out? And tell us all the things about that.
So I was diagnosed at 52, which, I put this into comparison of women and men, right? When you talk about women in breast cancer, that's 1 in 8, right? 1 in 8 women are going to face breast cancer sometime in their lives, which is a really scary number, right? It's 1 in 728 men are going to face breast cancer, right? So it's a much different, with that being said, women of sort of all ages, it's not, I don't want to say it's uncommon, but women of all ages come down with breast cancer, right? Men, it is increasingly rare to see somebody at 52. I'm on the very young side of having breast cancer, right? So at 52, It's not even sort of on the radar. Most men with breast cancer are in their late 60s, early 70s. That's when it usually happens. So I'm 10 to 15 years under that normal range. So I'm, if you go back, I was diagnosed in September of 2023. But if you go back to March or April, I'm not exactly sure, sometime about 6 months before, I'm in my bathroom and I'm putting on deodorant and I feel a lump. And I literally say out loud to myself, "Oh, that's weird." And then I literally just go on with my day. And I go on with the next day, and I go on with the next day, and I go on with the next day. And, a month later, I'm like, that's still there. All right, well, okay. And this is sort of most men's story in breast cancer, right? And it harkens back to, we are never taught in 6th grade health class or whenever you go through health class that when you find a lump, you tell somebody, right? So if I find a lump, I'm thinking it's everything else other than. So sometime around August, I was like, well, maybe I should have somebody look at this. But I had a primary care physician coming up, a primary care appointment coming up. So I was like, I'll just have my primary take a look at it. That's in a month. We go, and he lists off about 10 things that it might be, and none of them are breast cancer. But he also had the foresight to say, well, let's just be extra careful and send you in for a mammogram. And I'm like, what? Wait, hold on. I'm going in for a mammogram? I'm like, this is insane, but sure, I'll do it. And so they go in for the mammogram, and they're trying to, put as much breast tissue into the, this would have been a lot easier if I was the heavier weight that I was, but I had a lot more breast tissue at that point. And when I lost all my weight, I didn't have as much breast tissue. So I get the mammogram, and I'm sitting there, and this is my first scan, right? By now, I'm almost 3 years into this. I can look at a scan and sort of know immediately, but this is my first time ever looking at anything like this. So I'm like, is it upside down? I don't even know what I'm looking at. And I'm sitting there, and there's a nurse, the mammogram nurse, who had actually administered the mammogram on me. She has been in thousands, tens of thousands of these, of these situations, right? And while she can't tell me, because the radiologist has to come in and read it and tell me he thinks I have breast cancer, I asked her the question anyway. I'm like, so can you tell me what's going on? And she goes, I can't. But she goes, but what I can tell you is that your life is going to start moving incredibly fast and incredibly slow at the exact same time. And I was like, I mean, and that's her way of telling me, but I can tell you nothing has been more to the truth. I mean, that conversation seems like it happened 4 days ago, and it also seems like it happened 40 years ago, right? It seems like it was so long ago, that the beginning of this journey, versus in some ways it feels like it was last week that I was, just diagnosed. So they come in and they say, we believe you have breast cancer. We're going to do a biopsy. And I'm like, wait, hold on. Can we just take a step back and just say those words again? You think I have what? Breast cancer? And that was the beginning, the first time I felt this tinge of, wait, I have a woman's disease, just trying to figure out what that means. And so, when I go through that process, and I think any person, mostly women on the, they're watching you, but any person that is watching this, that has gone through that initial diagnosis, right? You meet with that nurse navigator and they hand you this big stack of stuff that you bring home and you're trying to read through. And I'm handed my big packet of stuff and I'm trying to read through it, but none of it applies to me. It's all she and her, and there's pictures of, Caucasian women in their 70s. And it's like, none of this applies to me. Like none of this. And so that was when I first started feeling like, man, like I don't fit in this world, even though I'm thrust into this world, right? I didn't ask to be in this world. I didn't choose to be here, but I'm in here anyway. And there's ways that I don't belong. That was sort of my initial diagnosis, how I, found out. But, it was also the beginning of all of this, right? Also, and so it's a funny journey, right? Because I certainly don't want to be on this journey, but while I'm on it, it has given me my life's purpose. So, it's certainly a double-edged sword.
Yeah, that's a really scary place to be. I can only imagine being in your shoes and having every single thing apply to women. And, as I said before, I did not know that males could get breast cancer, but it makes sense. We all have breasts, right? But
you're a human mammal. I say this all the time. If you're a human mammal, you have breast tissue, right? And if you don't want to say I have breasts or I have, fine. Then just say I have breast tissue or whatever. I mean, some guys are extremely sensitive about saying the word that they have breasts. And I'm like, fine, you don't have breasts. Fine. You have breast tissue, whatever you want to call it. That area of the body can get, right. It's exactly the same thing. So I say everything because, it's not just men. There are non-binary out there, right? There are non-binary folks out there that, are not being recognized because they don't fit in either category, right? But they still have nipples and breast tissue, right? And so that's what I say. If you have breast tissue, then you're susceptible to this.
Exactly. That's when I found out that one of my best friend's husbands had breast cancer. And the reason I found out about that was because something came up about one of the organizations in our sphere was having an event and they were there. It was all about women and he was there. And so they left feeling very defeated and really upset about it. So, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I think you probably follow the Dr. Robin Roth Booby Docs, and she wrote that book, Everyone Has Boobies, and it's for kids. And I bought it and read it to one of my granddaughters so far. And I just think it's so brilliant to help kids start learning about anatomy and how our boobies are not something to be ashamed of, and that everyone has boobies. All mammals have boobies, and, just started really having them think about those things. So, and I know that younger folks, don't learn about, not only do they not learn about female breast cancer, but also male breast cancer, which is the initiative that Test Those Breasts is about to launch, which you and I spoke a little bit about when we were doing our pre-interview. It's real. It's becoming real. It's going to launch the beginning of June, and it's going to be focusing on people between the ages of 18 and 30, and men going out into those younger communities and teaching them about breast cancer, bringing awareness, how to advocate for yourself. And men and women, they're all invited.
Just going to say, look, I mean, when men approach me on my social or whatever about, hey, I think I may have something. The first thing I tell them is like, look, the odds are in your favor. And I tell guys this all the time. The odds are in your favor, literally 99% in your favor, that you don't have breast cancer, that the lump you're feeling is a cyst or something, literally a lot of other things, right? So when you're going out there, and I've had some guys that are 22, 23 years old, very young men, come to me and they're really worried. And I'm like, look, the chances of this, especially because you are so young, but the chances of this being breast cancer are so astronomically low. But you need to go get checked out. That's always the but, right? It's always the, you likely don't have it because it's 99% women to 1% men. However, you need to go get checked out anyway. So I applaud you for going after those younger audiences. I think it's really, really important because there is some beginning data coming out that those breast cancer numbers are starting to drastically drop in terms of age. I mean, you're seeing much more younger women, and I'll put women in this because it's mostly women. You're seeing a lot more younger women come down with breast cancers and then in various cancers, but specifically breast cancer. And having that just be like you said, you didn't know that guys. I go back to, I remember in February of 2023, right? Before I found the lump, before I found anything, And in February of 2023, did I know that guys would get breast cancer? I don't think that I did. And I tried to, of course it's a huge part of my life now, but I try to go back and remember, but I don't think that I did. I don't think I did remember. I don't think I never knew that guys could get breast cancer. So it wasn't ever on my radar. So.
Well, and I never learned about it. And most people two things, most people I speak to never were taught about any of this when they were younger. And that is why I am so focused on that, because it is so flippin' important for everyone to understand their body, know the signs, know that they can get breast cancer, know their risk before they are ever even diagnosed, if they get diagnosed, right? So, and they do say 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer sometime in their lifetime. If you live long enough, it's a,
right.
It's a good chance, like especially for women, right. But I just never learned it at that age. And that's why, but also I just really, and we're going to get into this because you have such a voice on social media. Obviously, you've got some experience in marketing, and now you have this space that is really important to be in to bring awareness. And I even spoke to one of my board members' friends who had male breast cancer, never had the support at all. Like, he was dismissed, never could get into any kind of therapy type class because of it. And I was so glad that at that same time, you and I had a conversation, and I connected him to you, and now he's following you. And I'm telling you, he sent me a message like a couple of days later and said, thank you so much for, connecting us, because I'm watching some of his videos and that's what I went through. And, it has caused depression, anxiety, all the things, because he never had that support. So
it's bad enough to be going through breast cancer, right? And the chore of going through breast cancer on a daily basis is hard, right? It's no matter stage 0 through stage 4, right? It doesn't matter where you're at. Going through this is very difficult. When you layer on emasculation, when you layer on isolation, breast cancer is already an isolating disease from the rest of society, right? But then when you are the 1% within that disease, it's even harder, right? You mentioned earlier that your friend had trouble going to therapy. I have a story that I tell that, I belong to dozens of online communities, right? And I go to support groups, but sometimes there's something to be said for sitting in a room, in a physical room, with 6 or 7 other people that you're all commiserating about the same thing. And I asked to join a local support group that had a metastatic support group as well as a breast cancer support group. And I was told that I couldn't join either one. Now, the metastatic side is a little bit different, right? If you're metastatic, you're sort of used to the fact that sometimes you're not included out to the regular breast cancer support groups, right? If you're stage 1 through 3, you're welcome to go. But if you're metastatic, you're oftentimes asked not to come to that support group because you're their worst fear, right? You embody the very thing that they don't want to face. And so sometimes mixing metastatic with, regular breast cancer can be very difficult for those. So if you're metastatic, you're sort of used to that, right? That, oh, okay, I get it. But I was turned away from the metastatic group, but I was also turned away from the breast cancer support group. And it was because the women there didn't feel like they would have a safe space as much if I was there. And I was like, well, listen, that doesn't make my mastectomy scar go away. That doesn't make my stage 4 breast cancer diagnosis go away. That doesn't make any of this go away. In fact, all it does is it furthers my isolation from the rest of the breast cancer world. It was extremely difficult, and I did a post about it, and I, sort of raged against it. But it's one of those things that it was, the microaggressions towards men in breast cancer. I had a little moment with an organization that I really love today, where I sent them an email because they put out a really tone-deaf post that was about breast cancer, and it was all about women and her and all these things. And this organization doesn't normally do this. So I sent them a pretty scathing email saying, look, guys, I go on there and I talk about you guys all the time and the inclusivity and the diversity and all the things that you guys bring. And we male breast cancer patients are looking to you as this organization as a beacon of hope. And when you do stuff like this, I go to Dana-Farber in Boston, right? And when I walk into the Susan F. Smith Center for Women's Cancers, that's where I go to get treated, right? And nobody there is trying to throw that in my face. But every time the elevator door opens up and I'm walking onto the women's cancer floor, right? I don't belong there, right? And so every time I'm handed a brochure with all the languages, she, her, women, and all the pictures are women, I don't belong there. And so, all of these things add up to guys not feeling like they belong in a community that they didn't ask to be in anyway. And so you're already battling cancer. You're already going through all the things and then you layer on that I don't belong in this world. And some of it is men not feeling like they belong in the world. And some of it is, I've been told to my face, you don't belong in this world. I've been told to my face, women have told me that men have too much voice in this world and you're not taking this away from me. And I'm like, listen, I don't necessarily disagree with the first part of your statement because but at the same time, I'm not trying to take away your voice. I'm just trying to make mine heard. And I'm just trying to, and I say we as in men, are 70 years behind women in terms of we're just on basic awareness campaigns. We're in the 90s or 60s where women were in terms of breast cancer, right? That's where we're at. And so where I'd love to be in 10 years is when you say, hey, guys can get breast cancer and people don't go, wait, what? What do you mean? That's a real thing? That's where it's going to take 10 years just to get to that point, right? Never mind including us in research, including us in clinical trials, including us in all the other things that currently don't happen, right? And when I say that, people are like, wait, you're not included in research? No, we're not. We're not included in breast cancer research. Up to date, there has never in the history of breast cancer research been a study done on the clinical differences between male and female breast cancer, ever. And so my doctor, who's at Dana-Farber, who treats a handful of men, but he has mostly women patients, but Dana-Farber is the only place in the world, let this sink in, Dana-Farber is the only place in the world that has a male breast cancer department.
Wow.
That's crazy. There are other places that have, maybe an office under it, but Dana-Farber is the only one that has a clinical side and a research side in terms of a complete male breast cancer. That's it. One. And my oncologist, I'm just lucky enough to have the guy that heads the department. So in theory, my guy is the leading male breast cancer guy in the world, in essence, right? If he's leading the one male breast cancer department and he's the guy, he tells me all the time, he's like, Jake, I don't know how to treat you any differently than I treat the other women that I treat, because nobody's ever told me, no research has ever been presented to me that, hey, maybe tamoxifen and Verzenio aren't the right ways to treat you. Maybe chemo isn't the right. Is male breast cancer even the same disease biologically? We don't even know. And so that's the level of, when you look at male breast cancer as compared to female breast cancer, where female breast cancer has been, it's the most studied, it's the most researched, it's the most funded, it's the most everything, largely because of the pink ribbon, right? And the pink campaign. And, that's arguably one of the biggest, most successful marketing campaigns in the history of mankind, right? I'm a marketer, right? I'm a student of marketing, right? When you talk about major campaigns in the history of marketing, you have Ford, you have Pepsi, you have Coke, and you have the pink ribbon, right? These are massive, long time campaigns that churn a ton of money, but they don't include in any way men. And so that's when you start talking about it at that level, from the day that you walk in and you start getting your brochures and everything is pink and everything is flowers and everything is women, to when I get my mastectomy and when I'm waking up, the OR nurses are like, we didn't want to, they were thinking about me, but we didn't want to put the surgical bind on you because all we have is pink and flowers in the OR. And I'm like, do you think I'm going to turn down a medical device? Of course, put it on me. But that's like the level of how, I know some people are going to be like, oh, just crabbing about not being, no, this is a true exclusion, from a huge movement, right? Breast cancer, it's a sisterhood, it's a community, and we feel none of that. I go to a breast cancer conference and there's 1,000 women there and me. I go to a training and I may be even leading the training and it's 400 women and me, right? And so, it is extremely isolating. And so you either have to be okay with that and fully, absorb yourself into that pink world and that pink bubble, or you don't. And that's where a lot of men have a lot of the mental health issues that come with male breast cancer, right? They say male breast cancer is about 30% more fatal than female breast cancer. That's a huge gap, 30% more fatal. And the reason simply is later detection, because we're not aware that we can even get it. Secondarily, the pressures of the pink world or belonging to the pink world is what a lot of men with some toxic masculinity traits have a hard time being a part of, right? And so I tell people all the time, if I'm the guy with stage 4 breast cancer and I'm leading the conversation of male breast cancer in the United States, I'll work on our patients having more control over their toxic masculinity. However, it is a heck of a lot more easy for you to paint your waiting room green or orange or any other neutral color than pink. That's a much easier solution. It's a much easier solution for you to copy edit your brochure and changes things from she to her to they and them, so that it is more inclusive, so that, when you talk about, it's not about women, it's about patients, right? It's about, you can change your language to just be more inclusive so that you're literally going to save men's lives. And that's not being pejorative. That's not being overly dramatic. You are literally going to save men's lives when you stop being so insensitive and exclusionary for them in breast cancer.
Yeah, I find it really bizarre that women would be like, this is our disease, you stay out.
It's true. It's crazy. When the first time it happened to me, I was like, wait, what? What are you talking about? Yeah, it really caught me off guard. It really did.
I mean, they don't like it. Women don't like it when they're excluded, right? I mean, I know we've been fighting for rights for so many years. It's like, well, why can't we just all be in this together? And that's one of the things I love.
Right. And,
I do.
And some of that
is
like, well, you're a white man.
It's true. I mean, that's a thing. And white males have found
for the first time in my life as a white, straight, cisgendered male that I've been, true diversity, true separation where I belong, right? Right. I'm just trying to trying to be a part of something, and some people don't want me there. So it's difficult. It's frustrating. It's hard.
For my audience who are not watching right now, if you go to YouTube, you can see Jake's t-shirt that says radicalized by basic decency. I love it. I love that t-shirt.
Thank you.
It's right up my alley, right up my moral alley.
Great.
You know, but I mean, I tend to like my graphics and things, although I know that it needs to be improved and all of that. I've been doing all of my social media on my own. One of the things that I didn't want is all pink. Like I like pink, but I don't like it that much. And so I like to wear yellow for Know Your Lemons and green and, things like that.
My website, the guy with stage 4 breast cancer, right? There's a ton of pink on there. I wear pink all the time, and even before I got pink all over me. And it's more about the guys that are not okay with the pink world, right? There's a lot of women that don't like the pink world either, right? There's a ton of women that find the pink very infantilizing or romanticizing breast cancer or whatever. So,
hi, friends. And that is where we're going to pause for today's episode. Jake's story is far from over. And next week in part 2, we'll continue our conversation about living with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, advocacy, awareness, and the realities men still face when it comes to breast cancer diagnosis and support. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite platform so that you don't miss part 2 of my conversation with Jake Messier. Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I hope you got some great, much needed information that will help you with your journey. As always, I am open to guests to add value to my show, and I'm also open to being a guest on other podcasts where I can add value. So please reach out if you'd like to collaborate. My contact information is in the show notes. And as a reminder, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast will truly help build a bigger audience all over the world. I thank you for your efforts. I look forward to sharing my next episode of Test Those Breasts.